So I'm Debbie Nichols. I teach philosophy here, and I also lead the core curriculum evaluation team here, which is something that all faculty are involved in. So we're going to have a mix of faculty here today, some full-time, some adjunct, and some dual credit I know have signed up for this. But I'm also delighted to see some people who are not from the faculty. I was just saying it's Rebecca, I just met you?
Rebecca, yes.
That I think it's been really good these couple of days that we've learned some about advising, and maybe they're learning more about us, and it feels more like a family and more like a team if we know more about what each other is doing. We don't operate in our silos. So I really like that some of you are here that way. So the point of this morning is to let me give you an overview of what core curriculum assessment is about, how it works. Almost everybody at the college has heard of it. They know it exists. In fact, you may even participate in it because somebody said, hey, I need you to give me something like this, or here, do this assignment, or whatever. But it just seemed like it would be a good team exercise, and you remember that team is sort of the theme of today during our professional development days. It just seemed like a really good team exercise for us to know more, to understand more about the philosophy of it and the mechanics of it, so that we can participate in it with as much integrity as possible. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you an overview of how the system works. Then we'll stop and take a very quick look at how to create and align an assignment in eCampus. I'm going to guess that most of you who I'm looking at right now already know how to do that, but there are some people registered for today who probably don't. So if you'll give me a minute to do that, it won't take but a couple of minutes. Then, and here's the thing I'm really anxious to get to, is to look at some assignments together, to look at a rubric and to look at some of the assignments that we make here at the college and imagine, if we will, how those assignments might be made even better to match the rubric. I want it to be a little exercise for us to practice making really good assignments. And I do recognize that that may not be entirely relevant to some of you who aren't making assignments. I get that, and that's why I put it last in our time together today, so you can ease out if you feel like you need to be somewhere else at that point. So welcome, please get a snack and a folder and join us. So what we're going to do is talk about what assessment is, what skills we assess, and how Mountain View in particular accomplishes this assessment, and then what that requires of individual faculty in their individual classes. So that again may not apply to everyone, but like I said before, I think it's good that we're learning something about one another's jobs. So let's talk about what assessment is. You know what the word means, obviously. And if you're a faculty member, you assess your students. And those of you who work in student services, y'all do assessment of a different sort, don't you? Don't you have, what do they call those? Something learning outcomes. There's a name for it that people in business services assess. So you're not completely unfamiliar with the process of an assessment. But in general, the word in higher education refers to evaluating the effectiveness of a course, a discipline, or a program. And that's where student services programs come in, is under that one. In achieving and improving student learning, or in achieving and improving the services that are offered if you're not in the instructional area. What we're going to be talking about specifically is the assessment of the core curriculum. Okay, so that would be assessment specifically evaluating the effectiveness of the core curriculum in achieving and improving student learning, as it refers to a specific set of skills needed to succeed in college and in life. I'll show you what those skills are in just a minute. But let me make a couple of notes. First, y'all know what the core curriculum is? It's that set of courses that are sometimes at some schools called general studies or general education. It's all the courses that students whine about because That's not in my major. Why do I have to take that? That's those courses are the core curriculum. And I need you to know that this does not refer to assessing your course content. This is not about assessing English learning or history learning or math learning or physics learning. This is about assessing some other tangential skills that occur in all the core curriculum courses. It's not about your course content, and it is not about you as an individual. I don't get to say that to faculty enough, and there's always a little bit of concern that I'm being evaluated. Your evaluation every year is between you and your coordinator and your dean. That's got nothing to do with this process. This is about evaluating the whole big chunk of curriculum that we call the core curriculum to see whether it's doing its job. Not in terms of the specific courses, but in terms of some very specific skills that the state wants us to be targeting. Okay, why do we do this? We do it for a couple of reasons, and the most obvious one is to improve student learning, right? That's the whole point of, well, not the whole point, most of the point of doing assessment. The process of assessment accomplishes a number of goals. It gives students practice with the skills that we're trying to inculcate. It helps us to diagnose weaknesses in those skills. And I will say, at least for myself, it keeps me very intentional about trying to build skills. Have some of you faculty found that that's the case? Now that we know we're supposed to be working on this set of skills and our assignments need to be sort of geared to those skills, it's heightened my awareness of creating certain skills in my students other than philosophy, which, you know, I'm a philosopher, so I do philosophy, right? You're a psychologist, so you do psychology. But there are things we are supposed to be helping our students with in that process other than philosophy and psychology and physics and so on. So I need you to hear this. This is a diagnostic process mostly. Our goal as an institution is not just to produce big flashy scores that look great and make us look better than other schools. Our goal is to diagnose weaknesses in our students' learning so we as a faculty and we as an institution can target them. So we can say, oh, that's the part of critical thinking that they're not doing well with. They actually are doing pretty well with these critical thinking skills, but these critical thinking skills not so much. So we as a faculty and we as an institution can look at that and make a plan together and make a plan in our own individual classrooms for how are we going to help. So this is entirely a diagnostic tool that is intended to show improvement over time, but not necessarily to wow somebody with our most excellent scores. I'm saying that because I find that faculty tend to want to inflate a little bit, and that's not the point of this. We want to know the real picture of what our students are good at and not good at. The second primary purpose for doing core curriculum assessment is for reporting. We have two agencies that we have to report to every year about assessment. One is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, otherwise known as SACS. They require us to assess our general education curriculum and report every year. In fact, every accredited institution is required to do that. So if you teach somewhere else, we had some adjunct instructors who were signed up for today who also teach in other places. They're doing it in other places, not just here. I mean, you're doing it wherever you teach. I teach one class for another university in the area, just kind of on the side. I do assessment for them. Everyone has to do it. And all public institutions are beholden to the Texas Education Coordinating Board to do assessment. So we've got two agencies to which we must report annually about our hopeful improvements over time in our assessment. So we have to do this. And if you teach anywhere at any other school, you're doing this, whether you know it or not. We have to do this. And I guess My philosophy about that is if we have to do it, let's do it. Let's do it right. Let's see if we can learn something. Let's not just go through the motions and do it for perfunctory purposes, which I will admit was probably my first reaction to, great, the state wants something else from us. You know, I'll admit that was probably my reaction. But you know what? There's a reason they want this stuff, and that's because it can help improve student learning. So let's do this and do it right. My philosophy, at least. Okay, so what skills do I keep referring to here? The coordinating board has got 6 skills that they've asked us to teach and to assess as we teach our courses. Okay, this is not course content. This is other skills. Critical thinking, would we agree that we all teach critical thinking? In fact, I would say even over in student services and such, you all who deal with students, you have an impact on helping them walk through critical thinking processes. 3 forms of communication: written, oral, and visual. Empirical and quantitative skill. Teamwork, which is a little harder to assess, that one. Social responsibility and personal responsibility. These sound familiar to most of you? And most of you know that you're responsible for at least some of these. So let's take a look at that. How do we accomplish this at Mountain View specifically? Because every college or college system has its own way to go about this. They had to file a 10-year plan with the state and produce data for that 10 years before making radical adjustments to their plans. So here's the Mountain View plan. All of the colleges in the DCCCD have agreed to go on a 2-year cycle together. The reason we do this is because the report that goes to the coordinating board, we send together. We do it as a district. So there were certain things we had to agree on together. Not everything, but enough so that we could produce a report together. So the first year of the 2-year cycle, we assess critical thinking, communication, and empirical and quantitative skill. We're thinking about moving this one to the alternate year for complicated reasons. But the second year is teamwork, social responsibility, and personal responsibility. If you're faculty, you recognize that this is where we were this year. In fact, we're on our second cycle of the second year. So we're 4 years in to the plan right now. So we just rotate. And each discipline is responsible for both teaching and producing an assessment artifact, and we'll talk about those in a minute, for critical thinking and one of the forms of communication. Every discipline has selected one of the forms of communication to evaluate now and to teach, to focus on teaching. Some of you may be thinking, but wait, I thought we had to do 2. We did start out the plan with everyone choosing 2. That appeared to be just unwieldy. So as a district, we have filed an amendment to our plan that asks each discipline to choose 1. Obviously, the overwhelming favorite is written communication because that's probably the easiest to produce something for, but many disciplines are well suited to producing visual communication. Philosophy chose oral at a meeting I wasn't at, so we do oral communication along with speech and not too many other people, a few. Everybody does one of these. The other disciplines are doled out the way that they are most appropriate to disciplines. And by the way, it was not some administrators downtown who chose what to assess or which disciplines should assess which. It was discipline committees at the district level who made decisions about what was most appropriate to them. So this was a faculty decision, and in your packet there, you've got a chart that looks like this. This will tell you what your discipline is responsible to assess. So if you have any doubt, this is where to look. You'll see that at the top, We have the foundational component areas. That is a fancy district term for how we build our core curriculum. You'll see that there are stratifications of types of courses. So if you'll find yours, mine for example is down under language, philosophy, and culture, and then look for make sure your course numbers appear under that. Then across the top we have the various different core objectives, they are called, that we assess. Critical thinking, communication, empirical, quantitative, teamwork, social responsibility, and personal responsibility. Everyone should have the bubble under critical thinking bubbled in, same with communication. But beyond that, there's one or two additional bubbles that you should have bubbled in. Some combination of empirical, quantitative, teamwork, social responsibility, and personal responsibility. I realize not everyone in the room teaches courses, so this may not be of interest to you, but has everyone else figured out theirs? I see puzzle.
Well, I'm wondering why, as an aside, I hope I don't want to detract, but I'm looking at social and behavioral sciences and wonder why we're not assessing personal responsibility.
That's a really good question, and a good question for your district curriculum group, your district committee, because that's where those things were decided. That would seem really logical to me.
Kind of important, I would think.
It may be that someone thought teamwork was more important.
We're not doing that either.
Oh, you're not?
No, we're not doing teamwork or personal responsibility. Thank goodness we are doing social responsibility.
I know why.
Why?
Because everyone has to do critical thinking and written,
Right.
but you guys also took up empirical and quantitative skills.
Right.
And I know that they were trying not to give any discipline more than 4.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's probably how that decision got made.
Well, it's fine that we don't assess it, but we definitely teach it.
Yay for you. That, after all, is the point of all of this, right? The point is that we should all work together to build these 6, 8, if you count all the forms of communication, core objectives. These are skills our students need when they leave us and go out in the world. They need to know philosophy and psychology, but you know what? They need to be able to think critically and have good personal responsibility, probably even more than that. So for all of us, in fact, everyone even in student services, I've been in touch with people like Tony Hall and Kathy Edwards when she was over in the Office of Student Life, for all of us to be working together to help this happen for students who haven't gotten enough of it somewhere else. Would we agree to that? There's a pretty persistent sense of complaint at the college level. We blame it on the high school teachers, and the high school teachers blame it on the junior high teachers, and the junior high teachers blame it on the kindergarten teachers, and they blame it on the parents, right? That something socially may not be working as well as it should, and it impacts the educational process. And yeah, okay, that's true. But we do have this opportunity here. So not only has the state said, you will take advantage of this opportunity and do something with this, but what a privilege, huh? To get to step into that process and see if we can't work together to make a difference. So I'm glad you're teaching personal responsibility whether you assess it or not.
Thank you.
Keep going. See, yeah. See, I teach teamwork, but we don't assess that one.
Right.
But we deal with teamwork too.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe your first thought is the opposite of Dr. Yoder's, who thought, but wait, we teach other things. Maybe your thought is, yeah, we don't teach that. My thought when I got oral communication, my first thought was, what? I don't teach that. Because do I have time to teach people to speak in public? And the answer is kind of no. So that was my first thought. Of course, the coordinating board says we all teach communication skills and we all teach critical thinking. And that doesn't take a lot of convincing. We all do that, don't we? I think everywhere all over the campus we do. And this is really not intended to change your course content. It's intended to change the way we teach. So let me, since I blabbered about the oral communication thing, let me tell you how I handled that. I took an assignment in one of my classes, well, I mean in each of my classes, that used to be a written assignment, and all I did was make it oral, like a presentation. And no, I don't have time for all those students to make oral presentations in class. So that's not how I did it. I have them videotape themselves. Poor Randy Clower has to go to every one of their houses and videotape. That's a joke. That's a joke. They just, you know, selfie it or have a friend video it. And we do talk a little bit about how to give a formal presentation, and they make their visual aids and do the whole 9 yards. But then they just tape it and send it to me. And it actually turns out to be easier to grade than written work is. Who knew? So it's basically just the same assignment I used to have, but now it's oral. And it gives us an occasion to talk about oral communication and for me to give them some feedback on it as I'm evaluating their particular speech or whatever. And like I said a moment ago, it's not working. Okay. I think we owe basic skills to our students, and it doesn't matter where they didn't get them, because we can't fix that. I mean, that may matter in terms of how you vote, but it doesn't matter in terms of our day-to-day jobs. We have this kind of weird privilege of catching them now before they go out into the world entirely, before they're totally out of the nest. We have an opportunity to fix it. And as an ethicist, I can tell you there's a connection between the power to do something and the responsibility to do something. And we have the power to do something. Maybe not fix it all, but we can help make our students successful if we can help them learn teamwork and critical thinking and etc. Aren't they going to need this stuff when they leave here? Do we not work in teams all the time? Absolutely we do, etc. We use all of these all the time. So I know maybe it doesn't feel comfortable to everyone at first, but thank you for helping our students because this diagnostic tool has helped us so far to get more specific about the skills that students are lacking and see if we can do something about it. In fact, let me just cheer you up with something. You know our QEP, our Quality Enhancement Plan? Who knows what it is? What is our topic? Writing. Thank you, writing teacher. It's writing. And I will tell you that over the years that we have as an institution been targeting writing for the last 5 years, we have seen the writing scores, both for this assessment and on the QEP assessment, have gone up and up and up and up, while the other scores have all stayed the same. It is so encouraging when we look at it every year. The power of what can happen when the institution takes something seriously and all comes together for it is improving student skill. So if that doesn't prove to you that it can be helped, that encourages us every year when we see that. All right, so how do we do this? Exactly how does it work? Each semester, we collect inside of eCampus or Blackboard a student artifact. We call them artifacts. We don't call them that, that's the industry term. From every core curriculum instructor makes an assignment or more than one assignment sometimes, and we collect all of that student work inside of eCampus. If you're thinking, wait, I thought we only did that in the fall. That is the way we have done that in the past. We are moving to doing it every semester. Probably won't change anything in your class because you've already created the assignment, so it's not a problem. Anyway, we do this, and so then there's like thousands of pieces of student work sitting out there in cyberspace that are accessible to us. So then what happens is I tell the computer how many we need to be statistically relevant for our student population size, and the computer goes out and grabs them. Completely randomly. I have nothing to do with whose gets chosen and whose doesn't, and the whole process remains pretty well anonymous. I mean, Unless the student puts their name on the paper, then we know who they are. But otherwise, it's an anonymous, randomized process. So we end up with 3 or 4 or 5 or 600 for each of the core objectives. It depends on what the student population is in the core curriculum that year. And then we evaluate them. We score them blindly. We have a group of faculty members who volunteer to just spend the extra time reading these things and scoring them. So how that works, it is anonymous, is this way. The artifacts are scored on the computer, and they are compared to a rubric that comes from the Association of American Colleges and Universities. And in the couple of instances where we don't have an appropriate rubric from them, faculty from the district have gotten together and made our own that are patterned after those. You have that set in the right side of your packet. All of the current rubrics are there, and each one is 2 pages. There's a page of narrative explanation, and then on the back is the actual rubric. These are in the computer, and the scorer reads the student artifact and then scores the artifact on this rubric. And we're going to stop and take a look together at the critical thinking rubric in a little while. I put that a little later in the time here because it's possible that some non-faculty may not wish to sit through that, possibly. We'll see. So that's how they're scored. They look like this, except for the teamwork rubric. Somebody tell me why teamwork is going to have to be scored differently than collecting a written artifact inside of eCampus and an anonymous evaluator scoring it.
How do you judge teamwork in a thing if they're not there seeing them interacting with each other?
Very good. For that, you get a USB drive. Did you know that? In Professor Nichols' class, you get awards. You do. Actually, in my class is just candy, which I have a moral objection to distributing. But no, actually, the professional development office gave us stuff to give away to correct answers today. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to look at a piece of written work or a PowerPoint inside of eCampus and go, oh, well, apparently they got these skills correct. You don't know who did the work. Y'all know how teamwork stuff is, right? Group work. One person usually does most of the work, and you don't know who that person was. Was that a graduating, I started to say senior, not a senior, you know what I mean, a person graduating from the core curriculum? Was that an incoming freshman? Was that a dual credit student? Because when we get data, we break all of that up into cohorts of students so that we can make sure that our dual credit students are getting the same education as the face-to-face students on on campus, etc. So that's really not functional for an anonymous evaluator to do that. So we do what's called a primary evaluation, which means the instructor themselves does the evaluation. Most of them use some sort of peer review to help them in deciding what to do. You guys may want to take folders over there and a snack and sign in. Feel free to just, okay, there you go. Very good. So what happens is that I, or whoever's leading, sends a spreadsheet with all of your student names pre-populated on it, and all you do is fill in a ranking on the scores on the teamwork rubric. That's all you do, and then you send it back. It ends up being the instructor's decision, although I will say that best practices would suggest using peer review. I don't know why that word just went out of my head. Peer review. All right, so that's the only one that's different. So what happens to them? Well, first a core assessment team and other faculty volunteers, and they're always faculty, evaluate the artifacts, and that's hard to read, And then the scores for those various cohorts of students that I was just talking about are used to produce the reports for SACS and for the coordinating board. And then the core assessment team recommends methods for improvement. We take some of that to the faculty. We report to you what is not going well. Oh my goodness, guys, we really need to work on this or that together. The other thing that happens is that core assessment team takes formal recommendations to the PPA committee, the Planning, Budgeting, and Assessment Committee. We just did that for our last year's results a couple weeks ago because we were in desire of having some big things done across the campus that would require budget. So we take those to them and see what they think about working on some larger projects. We also do things like have Randy Clower make videos to publicize the core curriculum assessment, which we will soon be handing out to all of you for use in your classrooms and other places across campus. So that's what happens to it. We do produce a newsletter to try to keep everyone informed. If you are a dual credit instructor and we don't have your, okay, we meaning me, does not have your email address, you may not be getting this electronically. That was one reason I asked you to put your email addresses down on the sign-in sheet, is so that we can find you and get you better updates through our newsletter, which is called the Core Report. Some of you get those in your boxes and you're like, what is this? Okay. Okay, so what does this require of me if you're a faculty member? Teaching and creating an assessment assignment. So for each course, design one or more assignments that measure the skills on the evaluation rubrics. Some disciplines have common assignments. Let's see. Psychology only has like 2, right? And I think English, y'all have a common assignment? Do you not? Oh, you?
I mean,
okay.
I know 2 years we did visual analysis, but we don't have an assignment that we have to follow.
Not necessarily one, okay.
There's the research paper, but it doesn't have like a set topic on it. So they're set standards.
Right, okay. And we do that in philosophy. We all agree on an argumentative research paper, but we leave the topic specific to each course and each instructor. Okay. This, of course, is separate from any of your grading or course grading. You can have your grading rubrics inside of eCampus, and it's a totally different thing. Remember, we are not grading your course content. So then you set the assignment up in eCampus as an assignment. I'm going to show you how to do that, so that students submit their work inside of eCampus. I have also put inside your packet a document with screenshots that shows you how to do it too. So you'll have that even after I show you how to do it. Then you do what Blackboard calls aligning. It just means connecting your assignment to the proper rubrics. That is a 10-second process, if that. It's very, very easy to do, but everyone needs to know how to do it. Okay, now this is like the most important screen in the whole thing, so if you were checking Facebook, stop now. Well, just for a minute. Some guidelines for creating assessment assignments. This is where we're having a lot of trouble with folks not understanding the process, and therefore they're providing student artifacts that are unusable. We end up having to just dump them. And we don't want to do that. That's a waste of your time, right? So we don't want to do that. First of all, if you're smart, you'll use the same assignment to measure multiple objectives, right? You can clearly see that critical thinking and written communication could be done together, probably visual communication too, and that could be coupled with social or personal responsibility if you're having to do one of those. And you make one assignment that's just in your course now, and it covers everything, or nearly everything, that you are responsible for providing artifacts for. One of the big problems that we're having is that people are making assignments without consulting the rubrics. People have a tendency to say, well, of course we do critical thinking in my class. That assignment does critical thinking. but they haven't looked at the rubric to see exactly how critical thinking is to be targeted or measured. Does that make sense? So we get something that may in fact help a little with a student's critical thinking skills, but the scorer looks at this and goes, well, I don't know. What? I don't see any of that. And we're failing then to teach students these specific skills because we're not looking at the rubrics. Writing, I think, is another one that happens commonly with. It's like, well, sure, we write in my class. Because of course we write in my class. But if you haven't looked at the rubric, you don't know, for example, that we're also trying to teach them how to do citation and research. Did you know that's the weakest skill among our students anywhere on any rubric? Is citation. They don't know how to do it. I don't know where they didn't learn it, but they didn't learn it. And they do it wrong most of the time. Bless all the English teachers who are working on it. We really appreciate you guys. So if you don't know that your students need practice with that, then you probably won't assign that, and it won't be measurable here. So
What's that part mean says measure all 2 to 6 skills?
Is that every rubric has 2 to 6 skills that are listed on it. They're listed down the left-hand side. One of the rubrics only has 2. The empirical and quantitative has 6. Everything else has something in between, 3 or 4 or 5. We have asked you to try to target these assessment assignments to all of them. Otherwise, everybody just targets the easy ones and the students still don't get any practice with citation. Does that make sense? So we're trying, while still believing in academic freedom, and that the assignment is yours, and the curriculum is yours, and the topic is yours, we're asking you to aim for this because the state asked us to aim for this. Does anyone recognize that this is just the college version of TAKS and TEKS and all the things that the state dictated to the secondary schools? So far, they have said, you can design your own. We like that better than being told, here's the test, or whatever, right? We don't want to be told how to do it. So they've only told us what the target is. We may hit the target in any fashion that we wish. And we like to keep it there without it being any more intrusive on our individual classrooms and the curricula that we create. So we're trying to walk that line between academic freedom and what the state said we had to do. So that's why we want to target those skills. This has also become an issue. Many of you create assignments that you give students 2 or 3 or unlimited attempts at. Somebody tell me why this is not a good idea for assessment purposes. We have a really good prize this time.
The computer's not going to know which one to pull out. Oh, did he say that?
No, Luke raised his hand though. What were you going to say?
That's exactly.
I can't.
I was going to elaborate on that because it could be submitted after the artifacts are collected. They're in
That's true.
things because I have the same problem occur in my class when I allow multiple attempts. I do that because they submit their revisions, but instead of having to just create a separate file location.
Right. Well, who am I going to give the gift to?
Rock,
Yeah,
paper,
first
scissors.
answer.
I'll take it.
Thank you.
I'll buy you candy, Luke.
No, it is.
That's a really cool gift too.
It
It is. You and Luke can fight over that.
It's a good one. It's a charger.
It's one of those portable charger things, like a battery cell. Sorry.
We can wrestle.
But see, he even raised his hand very politely.
Okay, okay.
No, y'all can argue about that later.
Share. Whenever your phone is dead, just come down.
Y'all can argue about that later, or I'll get you another one.
Oh, he has one.
Oh, he has one. Awesome. Now that's teamwork.
Teamwork.
Yeah. if you allow students multiple attempts on this particular assignment, we're going to end up with 2 or 3 or 6 or a bunch of attempts of the same assignment that are floating around in the pool of artifacts. And 3 or 4 of them might get picked up by the computer for assessment, and some of them are going to be horrible first drafts, and then there might be a few that are later final drafts. So here's what I do in my class, is something that Luke just alluded to. If you design an assignment that has multiple steps to it, or you have drafts and they just keep uploading them, I put all my drafts in one folder, but then I create a different folder for the final product, and I only connect that one to a rubric.
That'll work.
Does that make sense? I'll show it to you when we move to the computer in a minute. It works just fine. And it takes, I don't know, 30 extra seconds out of my life to create that folder. So I'm sorry, let's go back. The attempts defaults at 1. So if you'll just leave it there for this particular assignment, that would be beautiful. Okay? Now somebody tell me why group work is not suitable for any evaluation besides teamwork. I don't have any more prizes though.
Because you want to evaluate each student's individual.
Bingo. Sorry, no prize. We want to evaluate the individuals because we want to divide them into cohorts, okay? We don't evaluate individuals in the sense that it has anything to do with their grade or their transcript or any, remember it's all anonymous that way. But we do want to be able to go to our IR office and have them give us like an average for, well, these were the students that were near graduation, these were the incoming freshmen, these were the online students, these were the dual credit students. And when you do a group assignment, you don't know who did the work. So group assignments are another issue with making an appropriate assessment assignment. Make all the group assignments you want, just not for this one. It's an issue. Unless you're going to have them upload different artifacts. Like they're each going to do part of it and just upload theirs or something, so we can tell what they did. So teamwork assignments are measured by you with the spreadsheet you will receive. That's the thing I was showing you just before. And I did want to caution you not to overestimate your student skills if you're one of those teamwork disciplines. We have instructors all the time who just give all their students 4s on everything. But for those of us who've done group work in class, do we know that they're not 4s on everything? I was just doing this year's teamwork spreadsheet, and there was one instructor who gave them all 5s. That happened last time too. So 5, the scale only goes from 0 to 4. So I'm not sure what that's about. They weren't looking at the rubric. Or they were being very rebellious. I'm not sure which. All right, so somebody tell me why extra credit assignments are not the ideal. We don't say you can't do them, but they're really not best practices.
Not everybody's going to do it.
And because not everybody does it, you're going to get, like what we call in logic, a misrepresentative sample.
The quality might not be as good because it's not a full graded assignment, so they might not put as much effort into it.
True.
Any points is better than nothing.
They tend to slap a little at extra credit assignments and not do their best. You also, yes, James.
In my class, normally the students that don't need extra credit are the ones that actually does it.
Yeah, what I always get are the ones who don't need it because they just want to cement that A in place. And then there's this last minute rush of the ones who are just horrible students and are hoping to pass when they haven't put any work into the whole semester. So you're going to get these really great students and you're going to get these really kind of not hardworking students, and those are the only ones you're going to get in your pool. That's why it's not really a best practice for assessment to use extra credit. I don't think we've said in our district plan you can't use extra credit, but it is discouraged.
Debbie, I've wrestled with what kind of weight to put on the assessment assignment. And it seems like if I weight it heavily, understandably, it's going to encourage students to do their best work, right? So, but I've not done that in the past because remember, we kind of added this assessment piece
Right.
after our courses are already built,
Right,
right? So I'm just kind of, okay, do this one too.
right.
So what is the rationale, or what are some maybe parameters for weighting the assessment assignment?
I haven't really done any research on that. You've mentioned something significantly, though. If your assessment assignment is something you tacked on to your course, so you're now trying to find some points somewhere for it, that could be difficult to find enough points to be motivational. I think a lot of us have actually chosen to take assignments we used to do and morph them in so that I have points available to give a good chunk of points to that assignment, and that's what I've chosen to do. Is there just a way to make a significant enough assessment assignment that you no longer psychologically feel like it's tacked on, so that you feel more comfortable dividing up the points between your assignments? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a psychological, it's a decision. This assignment that I have now created is good enough to count as a general course assignment and for me to give real points to it.
Is that the idea, though? It seems to me, I'm just guessing, you're the expert here, I really want to know what you're thinking, that we do want to solicit their best work. We want their best work, right? So it behooves us to put a pretty good weight on it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But philosophically here, theoretically, we should be making an assignment that's pretty engaged with our course, not something that feels like it's extra. So if it's not extra, then we'll probably be willing to pull points from something else and put those on that assignment to divide up the points more evenly between the assignments. I think that because we've only been doing this a few years and the system was kind of metamorphosing over time, it was evolving, that most of us did originally just sort of tack on an assignment, because I gotta have something. And so we put something in and then we didn't know what to do with it. But I think as time is going on, more and more of us are creating really creative assignments that are pretty well absorbed in the content of our course. And I no longer mind giving points because I feel like I've created pretty significant assignments for my students.
I had a discussion with a professor who put an assessment assignment in his course and didn't assign any points, and so the student couldn't do it.
Well, of course not. We have a very extrinsically motivated generation we're working with here. You all are the only ones who come to professional development you don't actually need to be at. So, yeah, students aren't going to do that. You do have to motivate them. So I think my best advice would be to make a creative assignment, and the last one you showed me was awesome. Remember that one that you created this year? Create something like that feels worthy to you. Like, this is worth my students' time to do this, and I'm not just doing this for assessment. And then I think you'll be willing to assign it a greater percentage of the grade. That would be my best advice.
Thank you.
So this is an evolutionary process here. We're all learning and growing into it. You know, at the first it was like, oh my goodness, Sax needs something, let's hurry up and get something. And now we're maturing. We're maturing in our ability to do this.
Our attitude is improving too.
Our attitude is improving.
First year I cussed it.
Well, and you're not alone.
Oh, that's on tape.
That's on tape.
What?
Okay, I'll tell you what. For solidarity's sake, I will tell you that the first year I did too. And I wasn't the leader, and I didn't want to be the leader. And because, what does Sax want now? You know, it was one of those kind of things. Yes! And insert Toy Story. And I have a joke about that.
I remember.
Yes.
I just want the record to reflect that James Harris did not curse.
Hold on a second, let me get a shot at him.
Well, and what Deb Yoder here is describing is just that evolution that we've all gone through from, oh no, what do we have to do now, to, okay, let's do it well and see what we can learn. And I think we're starting to kind of grow into it now and figure out what it is useful for and how to make it better, how to get better results from it so that we don't feel like it was wasted. And that's just an evolutionary process that we're all walking through. And I feel like we're on this kind of cusp of a maturity in it. More and more people are getting involved. And I think it's becoming, what did I say to the PBA who was there? I feel like we're suddenly a real boy, like Pinocchio. You know, like we've become real in some way that we didn't used to be real over time. So if there are any, I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Debbie, I think an issue maybe just needs to be stated.
Okay.
And that is, at first, I believe, James, the other faculty in here, let me know what you think, if this is true or not, but I felt a little bit insulted by this being imposed on us, as if I were not teaching what I needed to be teaching and I was not doing it well. It's like, okay, we're going to test you to see if you're doing this, and we do that. We do teach those things. We do assess those things, but I didn't understand that there was going to be a process of morphing my assignments to fit what could be extrapolated from eCampus and measured by the rubrics. Okay? Does that make sense?
I think you're spot on, because I had that same feeling, that it's punitive rather than something constructive to help the college.
Right, right. And so I resisted it at first because I thought, wait a minute, well, that's what we do, is teach and assess. We teach and assess, we teach and assess.
But we
now
focus
I'm
our...
understanding that in order to make it a workable kind of strategy, that I had to morph the assignments. And does that make sense?
It does. I think we're going through now what probably secondary teachers went through 25 years ago when they suddenly felt like, what do you mean I'm not teaching good enough? But also remember that this is not about your course content. You've been teaching that well for many years, as have I and most of the people in this room. This is really about heightening our awareness and our team effort toward what are called soft skills, and I hate that term because it makes it sound like critical thinking is not very important. It's soft. But what that means is skills that are sort of common to all of us and tangential to our particular course material.
But they're hard to measure, too.
They are hard to measure for sure. Yeah, but you know, the whole college, and even student services, I don't just mean instruction, all of us have contact with these skills like teamwork and social responsibility and critical thinking. I had these wonderful conversations with Kathy Edwards and Tony Hall when this all first began about ways that we could work with student services to increase the student skill in these various areas. So I would just say that for me, it has helped make me more intentional about the soft skills. Instead of being only concerned with philosophy, I am now more diagnostically interested in those other skills as well. And it's grown on me over time, not just because it's my job, but because I've learned a few things. I don't know. Is it working out? Do we need therapy? That's a joke because she teaches psychology, okay? Or are you working into it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'm understanding the need for it and how it doesn't change me
No, it doesn't.
or my philosophy of teaching at all, or what I prioritize in my classes is what I believe the students I most definitely want them to have at the end of the course. but like you said, it makes me more intentional about creating the assessments.
Well, and remember that it's not about what you teach, it's about how you're teaching it. Would this be better in a group project? Could they learn a little about teamwork if they saw the rubric and we worked on that in a group project? Could I meet the requirements of my content and do a speech instead of that written communication thing like I shared with you earlier? It has to do with the way we deliver and what we ask of them to demonstrate their learning. This should not foil your course content. That is still yours, and you know what needs to happen there. That's a whole different subject. So, are we semi-okay there? All right.
Oh, very good.
Okay, I just skipped a screen because it really is aimed only at dual credit instructors. We had some dual credit instructors registered. Are any here? Because there's a few faces I don't recognize. Any dual credit instructors? Okay, then moving on. So a quick way to get started on creating an assessment assignment is just to check with your discipline coordinator to see whether you have one that they could suggest to you or that the whole discipline agrees to do together. Then if you got to make your own, then what I would do is get out all your rubrics, the ones that are assigned to you. There'll be 3 or 4 of them. And take an assignment that you already use, or look at all your assignments to see what would work the best. And then just make adjustments to it while following these rubrics. You read the rubric and say, oh, I do most of this. Okay, well, I could put that thing in there and then it would meet the critical thinking rubric. And then I could put citations in there and it would meet the writing rubric. And then I could morph my question a little bit and it would meet the social responsibility rubric. You see what I'm saying? Take something you already do. All right. So I'm going to show you how to create and align an assignment. I wanted you to know that I did create a video to show you this. Unfortunately, I'd already printed your slides, so the video thing is not in there, but all you have to do is email me and I will send you the link to that if you need the video, okay? But this is super easy. Let me just show you. Probably most of you know how to log on to eCampus then. If you do not, please see me, I will show you. It's very easy. A lot of our dual credit instructors were not yet using eCampus. I'm going to choose one of my courses and show you how to do this. To create an assessment assignment, you go to where you keep your materials. And if you don't have a place where you keep materials, you can add one by going up to this little weird symbol and adding a content area. That is in the video if you need to see it. So I go where my unit materials are, and okay, I'm just going to create a new assignment. So I go over to assessment, and in this case, assessment just means assessing my class, my students. But drop down to where it says assignment. We cannot use a test or a discussion board or any of those things for this kind of an assignment. So make it an assignment. Then you just fill out the basic information. This is my assignment title. It is extremely helpful if you put an instruction summary in the little text box. When our scorers open up these student artifacts, they can see what was in this text box. And sometimes it's super helpful to know what did the instructor even ask them to do, because sometimes we can't tell. We're still not grading your course content, but sometimes we don't know if they're thinking critically because we don't even know what the issue was they were supposed to be thinking about. And it's just terribly useful sometimes to know what the assignment was.
So would you like it? Can you just copy over the full course assignment?
Sure. Cut and paste it. What I do is I just put a little summary here and then, hold on, then I browse my computer and attach the long version. The version where I tell them all the details. But you could put it all in the text box if you want.
Okay, the attach file works.
Yeah. But yeah, you can browse your computer and do the long version. You can do any of this you want to, but the only thing you have to do is put in the points. If you want to attach your own grading rubric, now that's separate from the core assessment rubric. Here's where you would do that. That's a separate thing. You can do safe assign under submission details if you want to, but you don't have to. The only things you have to do, title, instructions, points, then you're done.
Does it matter the grading or the display of grades? Because some of my assignments I have set as incomplete, complete. Some of them I have set as percentage. Should it always be like percentage or?
Nope. Because the assessment will have nothing to do with your grade. We won't even know your grade. We will see nothing that you have written to the student. None of that will be there.
So that just fulfills the requirements of eCampus, not the, okay.
Yep.
As long as you put points in there, you can still have it complete, incomplete.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right. I was just wondering if that it mattered which way, but I know that you have to put in points to be able to even create data.
It won't let you submit unless you put in some points.
Yes.
So put in some points, however much it's worth within the context of your course points. And we'll never see your grade. We never see your grade center. If the student doesn't put their name on the paper that they upload, we will not know which student it is. If they don't put your name on the paper that they upload, we will not know who you were. Okay?
Do you want them submitted anonymously? I mean, should part of our instructions be, don't include your name?
That's a hard question to answer. We always used to say yes, we wanted it to be as anonymous as possible. I think a best practice would suggest that it would be really nice not to know your name.
Just the instructors?
Right.
Okay.
It's a little hard to, I don't know, feel completely unbiased when we're doing things that relate to our friends, in other words, each other on the faculty. I think it would be useful if they did not put your name.
Okay.
I try to get them to only put their student number, because you've got to know who the student number was, even if you don't know the name.
Well, you actually don't if the paper is going to be graded inside of eCampus.
Okay.
Because eCampus will tell you when you're grading them who the student was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The student's name is at the top of the eCampus page if you're grading them that way. So you'll know who they are. They can put nothing at the top of the page and you'll know who they are. And we won't, which is great. But I think the not knowing who the instructor was is probably pretty useful.
Yeah.
Okay, you can do other things on here, but those are just the basics. You submit. Down at the bottom, you see what I just created down here. You can grab these little handles on the side and put it anywhere you want. Just put it where you like. Now, if I want to connect that to an assessment rubric, that is called alignment in Blackboard speak, we click the little down arrow next to the title. Notice that it says add alignments. Click that and watch what happens. Slowly. Notice that all these rubrics come up that say THECB, Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, core, critical thinking, visual communication, written communication. You see these are all the rubrics. So just check the ones that are relevant to the assignment you just made. It could be 1, it could be 4. Depends on your assignment. Click submit and look what happened. Under my assignment appeared the notation that it is aligned to these 2 topics. Make sense? Now, if you say to yourself, oh my goodness, this wasn't the personal responsibility one, I shouldn't have put that on there. Just click the little red X and it goes bye-bye. Okay? I told you before I would show you one of the things that I do in this particular course. Excuse me. I have a 2-part assignment. So part 1 goes here. Notice that I do not have any of those little alignments underneath of it. I didn't align it to anything. Part 2, which is the final product, goes here, and I did align it to personal responsibility. Does that make sense? And next year it'll be to written communication and critical thinking as well. All right? So that's what I said I would show you. That's easy enough, isn't it? And there are written instructions with screenshots that are inside your packet, and I will send you the video if you wish to see it.
Can you, like, just send it to the assignment sheet?
I can, sure. I can do that.
And then I will disseminate it to people who are not able to make it.
I appreciate that. Okay, so one thing, this is more the part of this I was looking forward to. I realize this is a long session. I get that. They planned a lot of 2-hour sessions this morning, so everyone's in long sessions. The more important part of all of this is creating an assignment that is suitable, not only to help teach your students, but to be suitable for assessment scoring. Both things need to happen. So I'd like to spend some time with you on that. If you are not a faculty member and you're feeling like, hey, I want breakfast and why did I come to this session, then this might be a good exit place because you will not be creating an assignment. But we're happy to have had you here just to learn about what we do here. So I'm glad you were here. I'm not telling you you have to leave. I'm just telling you you might not care about this. If you would look at your critical thinking rubric together, it's in the packet of rubrics. It's the first one. The packet is on the right side of your folder. Has everybody got one? Because this is rather difficult to see on the screen. It's kind of small-ish. Yeah, it's pretty hard to read. I wanted to talk about this rubric for a minute because it's one that we all do. And so that it's relevant to all of us. Did you find it, Deb? Or
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, just making sure. Okay, notice that at the top of the page there's a definition, and then the skills listed down the left-hand column are all the skills that are relevant to that definition. Across to the right, we have a capstone, a couple of lower levels that are milestones, and then the lowest level of the benchmark. We do permit our scorers to give a 0 if there is no evidence of a skill at all in the artifact. So let me just give you a couple of illustrations of how this works. If you look at the first line, explanation of issue, issues, the issue or problem to be considered critically is stated clearly and described comprehensively, delivering all relevant information necessary for full understanding. How often would our students score a 4?
Maybe 10%.
Yeah, not very many people are going to score at this level. Many people look at these rubrics as sort of representing the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior levels of college. I don't know that that's what they were intended for, but it is a kind of realistic look at how the skill development works. We have said on all of our reporting instruments that we're really aiming at a 2. The only place where we have earned a 2 consistently on any rubrics is for the writing, which we didn't when we started. Yay, QEP, right? I shared that with you. Yeah, yay. I gave a plug for QEP before. So slide over to the 2 and let's read that one. The issue or problem to be considered critically is stated, but description leaves some terms unidentified, ambiguities unexplored, backgrounds undetermined, and/or backgrounds unknown. The 1 is even lower than that. The issue or problem to be considered critically is stated without clarification or description. So you see how the skills build to the left across the page. I won't do this for every single line, but let's look at the line of evidence. The 4 column, information is taken from sources with enough interpretation and evaluation to develop a comprehensive analysis or synthesis. Viewpoints of experts are questioned thoroughly. And let me tell you, that doesn't happen often.
That doesn't happen on CNN or Fox News.
Well, and I hate to admit this, I do, but she's right. Right. If you slide over to the 2, we have information is taken from sources with some interpretation evaluation, but not enough to develop a coherent analysis or synthesis. Viewpoints of experts are taken as mostly fact with little questioning. Okay, and the 1 is even below that. So this is what our scorers are doing when they are scoring. Let me draw your attention to the 3rd line down, because this is our weakest skill on critical thinking. Thoroughly analyzes own and others' assumptions and carefully evaluates the relevance of context when presenting a position. That does not happen anywhere on the news or anywhere in our homes, and therefore does not happen with our students. Okay, there's probably a home somewhere where that happens, right? But as Deb has quipped here a moment ago, fewer and fewer of these skills are evident even in the professional world. So it's really hard for our students to gain practice with these things. This issue of understanding biases and assumptions and being fair to both sides, understanding where someone on the opposite side is coming from, why they think, what their assumptions are, that is just among our worst skills. And it has been for 10 years. We have struggled with it. It's a really good example of one of those things that heightened my awareness in such a way that I really restructured one of my courses. Now, instead of them having to write a research paper where they take a position, I have them write a research paper where I better not know your position. If I can tell what side you're on, you fail. Now, later in the semester, we take positions, but we start with, you better write me an argument from both sides, or I'll have the half the class that's for something sit over here and the half the class that's against something sit over there, and then I make them swap. You argue the other side and you argue the other side, kind of like a debate team or something. Because I recognized, oh my goodness, they really are horrible at this. I need to help. And they're not getting any help from the news media or anywhere else. Facebook, #1 place for news, right? So, and again, down, if you slide over to the 2, we have questions, some assumptions, identify several relevant contexts when presenting a position, may be more aware of others' assumptions than one's own, or vice versa. It's usually other people's, not my own. Then we have the student presenting a position on the 4th line down. And, well, let me read the 4. Specific position is imaginative, taking into account the complexities of an issue. The limits of the position are acknowledged. Others' points of views are synthesized within the position. Again, if you slid over to the right, you'd find lower and lower levels of that. And then finally, we have the last line, conclusions and related outcomes are logical and reflect the student's informed evaluation and ability to place evidence and perspectives discussed in priority order. And it slides down as you go to the right. Yeah, Luke?
I just realized, and talking about developing assignments, I don't know if it's helpful because of the nature of most people's curriculum, but in one of my research papers, to address both acknowledging other people's views and their own position, I have it structured so that their thesis and body paragraphs follow essentially some people believe this, and dealing with a controversial current event. Some people believe this, other people believe this, however, considering all the facts, assumptions, and underlying warrants, and then they state their position. And so their body paragraphs follow in a similar structure, identifying both sides of the argument, identifying their position, and then aligning that with common ground and opposing viewpoints. students and their
Very good.
That is good.
The more we structure the assignment to lead them through what we want them to do, the better the results are. And I used to sort of think of that as kind of cheating because they didn't just write the essay on their own. But over time, I realized they don't know how to write that essay on their own. When we give them a structure, they're learning how to write that argumentative essay. I literally now give my students a form with boxes on it that literally says, the problem is, what I know about the problem is, what I wish I knew about the problem is, what one side thinks about the problem is because, they have to name 2 or 3. What the other side thinks about the problem is because they have to name 2 or 3. And it's a form. And by the time they're done with it, they have a thesis sentence. And I used to regard that as kind of cheating. I'm making it too easy. But I have noticed over time, it teaches them how to build the argument. So.
There's a really cheap book called They Say, I Say, The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing. It's essentially a book of templates.
Oh, cool.
It's available, and so it's fantastic. I used it as undergrad and grad school, and now I use it in the classes I teach for other colleges as well.
They Say, I Say.
They Say / I Say.
Is it still in print?
Yeah, absolutely. They're on, I believe, volume 4 now.
Oh.
4th edition.
4th edition?
But 4th edition.
Luke, will you send that information?
Absolutely, yes.
Why don't-
Could I have could you also email me your list of questions? Because we might be able to adapt that for a handout.
Sure. Well, let's start sharing. See, this is why we do assessment. Every time we talk about it and every time we talk about the charts of results that we get at the end of the year, we start sharing. We share resources, we share ideas. I've gotten my very best ideas from you guys. So let's share what works. Okay? Okay, so on the left side of your packet, there are a couple of pieces of paper. Well, you need both of them, so pull them both out. Since we just looked at the critical thinking rubric, and yes, we're winding down, look at the one that says, how could each of these critical thinking assignments be made even more suitable to the critical thinking rubric? Okay, I didn't identify anyone's disciplines. I kind of made it more generic. But these are actual assignments that have been given at our college. One of them is mine, so I put myself out there. If I'm going to put you out there, I'm going to put me out there. So let's think about what could be even better. So the first one, students are to complete a 3-page technical writing research paper on the following topic. And then I think there's a Supreme Court decision linked there. The Supreme Court rendered a decision that same-sex marriages are to be recognized by social institutions. Please make an argument either for or against the Supreme Court's decision. Views should be supported with credible research. So it's a good argumentative essay, right? On a relevant topic. Any way that anybody can think of to make that even more suitable to the rubric we just read.
You didn't say anything about citations. Would that be something that should be added?
Yes, and I'll be honest that some of these I was trying to shorten, so I left out all the
Citations.
the particular, you must have 3 sources and you must, whatever. I left some of that out.
Okay.
But yes, that it could go for the written communication rubric also if it had citations.
It's basically asking for one side, for you to pick one side or another, but not to present both.
That's right. And there may be a hope of the instructor, and it might work sometimes, that the student does address his opponent's argument, but there's no specific direction to do so. So sometimes we get essays out of this that are fascinating, but don't look at the other side. So that would be the chief thing, if I were this instructor, that I would want to add. And maybe it's added in class. I don't know. All I can see is what's in the computer. I pulled these out of the computer. Yeah.
In which arguments are also factual, positive statements versus normative statements, opinionated statements that can go into, that supports the decision for research. I use that a lot in my assignments. So when you make a decision and you read an article or statement, which parts of it are actually factual, which parts of them are opinionated to make you choose your argument.
There you go.
Give you more.
Oh, we could all use that, couldn't we?
Evidence,
Yeah.
Critical
I did
thinking
an assignment
rubric.
based off of President Trump making the statement about black unemployment was low under his policies. So I made the students go through all of his policies and pick which policy would actually impact unemployment, and specifically at black unemployment. And there's none of the policies were the truth. But,
Well,
but it's all about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve
right.
the reason why that's the case, not the president's policies. Doesn't put it in the policies.
So and that's what we're trying to help them do, is not just learn economics, which is your field, but to learn how to read carefully, learn how to parse a sentence for content, how to distinguish between opinion and fact. Oh my goodness, you can't watch the news anymore. You just can't. And I don't even care what kind of politics you have. The news is nuts because they conflate opinion with fact now all the time. So if anybody's going to teach our students to do this, we better do it. Okay, awesome ideas for all of our essays. Okay, next one. Complete this assignment by watching the linked video, Bowling for Columbine. You will write an essay of at least 2 typed double-spaced pages, oh, there's an extra word in there, on Blackboard for this course, responding to the following questions. What is the theme of Bowling for Columbine cartoon? Is there a noticeable bias for or against the subject of the cartoon? The cartoon is gun control, okay, in case you've not seen Bowling for Columbine. Did the message of the cartoon change or support your view of the subject matter? If so, in what way? What is your overall reaction to watching the cartoon? Was the delivery method used effective in conveying its message? That question was because they were using it for visual communication when they created it, so that's not particularly relevant. And then to assess the writing part of the exercise, you must cite sources outside the video that are credible in framing your response to the issue. So we have a kind of a political cartoon. They've been asked if there's bias, which is a good question. Did the message change or support your view of the subject matter? In what way? And what is your overall reaction? Again, not identifying, no offense to anyone, okay? Please, if this is your assignment.
I like the assignment. I wonder if one of the questions could be phrased to include influence of context, or for the student to identify their assumptions. Perhaps, what was your view about this before you watched the cartoon? Has your view changed, and how so? To help them identify their assumptions, maybe.
Which I'm guessing is what they're getting at item D, but it seems like it could be a more leadingly, no, not D.
See?
C, yeah. That it might be,
Yeah.
that it's an attempt to do
Yeah,
that.
that probably does it, yeah.
Okay.
Be worded better.
Yeah,
You
Luke?
could also ask if there could be different interpretations, if you could say someone of a different background or with different beliefs would respond differently to the cartoon, and in what way.
See, I would love to see that question in there.
It would also handle social responsibility, multicultural
Yes.
skills.
And by the way, they use this same assignment, this discipline does, for social responsibility, and that's a piece of it that we never get out of it. So having a question about the other side, how would someone else of a different opinion than yours viewing this cartoon, how might they respond and what might their argument be? That would cover several things a lot better.
And also provide, I would like to see more context of this video put it into context and also providing, I'm following the rubric, so I'm like,
Yes, okay.
could be providing some outcomes of, for and against, what the consequences will be.
Right, and I think it's the social responsibility rubric asks for consequences too, and I know the personal responsibility rubric does. The state of Texas is all of a sudden extremely interested in us helping our students connect behavior to consequences. So it's on several rubrics, and I'm not really sure if students can't do that, but apparently the state thinks they can't. There's a lot of emphasis on it now.
They can. I see that in my class.
All you
They
have to do is
think-
go to any restaurant.
Yeah.
Watch what's going on with family dynamic.
Yeah.
There's no consequence.
Well, so thinking about what would the consequences of this position be and the other position be would be a useful leading question for the students.
I would also change the structure of the questions to eliminate yes or no answers, such as is there no difference, was the delivery method effective?
Yeah.
And what is the theme, which would be a simple answer. So that way they would have to expound on them. Even if you don't change the structure of the question, ask why or how so. I think changing the structure of the question would probably be the most effective.
Okay. I think that's an excellent idea, and here's why. The very next one that's on your page says assessment quiz, and do you notice has exactly the same instructions? But it's titled as a quiz, and the students aren't to write the 2+ page essay, they're to answer the questions. So what we tend to get out of this assignment is yes or no, or a phrase or one sentence, not a paragraph.
If people actually answer it, because it's worth only 3 points of extra credit, so you might not get much with it.
Yeah, and it depends how the point system is structured in that course, but 3 points certainly doesn't feel like very much to most of us. And that's in fact what's happening, is that this particular instructor, and I do not know who it was, but they turned it into a quiz, and it trivialized the product in a way that we really can't use it.
They could turn the essay in as the assessment artifact, and that would have given you more information, right?
Yes. The students who do this as the essay assignment in number 2 generally turn in a better product that's more thoughtful. Even though I think we could still improve questions, we get more thought out of them.
This is the extra credit thing too, again.
Yes, it is extra
that's
credit.
right.
It is.
I would make sure that just grammatically titled instead of entitled, because entitled is referring to feeling oneself superior.
Right.
But yeah.
Yes, that's true. Bad grammar. I'm one of those grammar crazy women. Does bad grammar on the college campus make y'all nuts? Well, nobody would be more nuts than Luke. Okay.
Especially when I find it in my own writing.
Oh yes, of course, which is usually due to being in a hurry. Okay. Look at number 4. Students should watch the first presidential debates, and this was, back at the election, and then explain 5 issues candidates Clinton and Trump argued about during the debate. What are the similarities and differences in their stand on these issues? Relate the 5 issues to class materials, as I assume what that should say. Awesome assignment. But this is a great example of an assignment that was probably already in this course, but could be tweaked a little bit to make it so much more awesome. What's missing here?
There's no, it's all about the candidate's opinions, and there's no request for factual.
No assessment.
Evaluation of their argument.
Exactly. There's no place where the student has to take a stand, right? In fact, they didn't really even ask, they just asked, well, they did ask to explain 5 issues, okay? So there'll be some depth to that, some analysis to that. But they don't have to take a stand.
And they don't have to analyze the assumptions behind these
Right.
differences.
None of that is there.
And also the teacher is asking for relate those 5 issues to class materials, but not to really factual evidence, because even as teachers, we may be biased, you know, in our material, in the way we approach some subjects. So I wouldn't use class materials.
Well, that was their attempt to try to get them to cite sources.
Yeah, it was probably an attempt at the part of the critical thinking rubric that talks about evidence, and maybe the instructor is trying to weave this assignment back into vocabulary and things from the course. It certainly isn't going to go for the written communication rubric because there aren't any real citations here. There's no research. Not that they have to do the written communication rubric. I'm just saying you can kill two birds with one stone if you're careful.
Or 4 birds sometimes.
4 birds if you're really careful. It just seems to me like this needs a little bit of a massaging in terms of, because it's a great assignment, isn't it?
It has good potential. It just needs tweaking.
Explain why the candidates likely believe as they do. What is it about their background or worldview that is likely to lead to this stance on gun control or abortion or walls or whatever it is, right? Whatever the issues are.
Context.
Right.
I would love to see this updated to deal with perhaps people running for election, like the gubernatorial election currently going on, or the mayoral election. Sorry, the word for mayor.
Mayoral.
Absolutely, I need to finish my coffee. But yes, related to those, and then I would also like to solicit to the instructor to have those students submit that for the newspaper, and then we can continue to publish these assignments in print form. That's a whole different matter.
Cool.
If you tell me that that is later, I'm going to approach them and ask them.
Okay. That would be great for the newspaper.
That's good.
Okay. Well, flip it over on the back then. Let's keep it moving. So, use the chart you previously submitted and at least 3 cited sources to write a narrative explaining how you solved your moral dilemma according to the following outline. An introductory paragraph with an underlined thesis sentence. Understanding ethical choices. Explain the ethical issue to your reader who knows nothing about it. What's the problem? Why is it a problem? Evaluation of different ethical perspectives. Explain the various perspectives on your issue, including the consequences, obligations, and moral ideals in favor of each, which came from the chart they did. Be fair to all sides. Your decision. Then be clear about which is your own perspective after analyzing the situation.
Wowzer, that's a good one.
That's the one you did, didn't it? You really aligned it to them. I mean,
I did. The vocabulary on it came straight off of the personal responsibility rubric, and then I just made adjustments to fit it to the critical thinking rubric. But even as I just read it, I realized under D, be clear about which is your own perspective, I should have said, and why? Connect it back to your consequences, obligations, and moral ideals. I needed to say that. So, you know, shame on me. Okay, now that Lynn knows it was mine, just critique anyway. We're here for that. Each semester I get better at this, so we want to keep helping each other.
Well, it makes, I mean, when you create assignments, the easiest way is you go through, this is what we want you to do. Just pull the language straight from here.
Right.
I want your paper to have this, and just name each one of those things as to what
Exactly.
to include in there.
I know some instructors who do let their students see the rubrics. Like, this is not specifically the rubric I'm going to grade you on, but you need to know that this is part of your writing grade and your thinking grade, and we're looking at this for you. We're trying to build these skills into you, so do these things. Or they make elements of this in their own class grading rubric. I've done that on several of mine. What you got, Luke?
I would just add the verb after the word introduction, since you have them the rest of them for parallelism. Just write or develop an introductory paragraph.
Yes, okay, thank you.
That's very minor.
Everyone needs a grammar editor.
it's true.
I also who wrote notes, so for the editing. But,
Oh, okay. Thank you. Awesome. And this, by the way, was, for example, this was the short assignment that I put into that text box. Remember when we were looking at the text box? I have longer instructions that tell them about length and sources and this and that, but this is the outline that I put in the text box. Okay, here's another one. Each student will create an individual or group project grounded in civic virtue, meaning community service, and put it into practice by the individual group. Construct a 5-minute visual presentation documenting your experiences to be presented in class. In your presentation, answer the following questions. Describe what type of project was attempted. How did the project promote self-government? The next one says exactly the same thing, and it might have meant how did it not promote self-government? I just cut and pasted these, so I'm not sure what it means. How did this project promote the good of the community? How will this project affect the future? What items and tools were used to accomplish this project? What were the steps used to succeed? How long did you spend? What was gained, influenced, or accomplished at the conclusion of the project? And would you do the project again as attempted? And I do not know whose this is. Does it strike you that this is not really a critical thinking assignment?
It's
Visual,
descriptive.
I'm sorry.
It's descriptive too.
It's community serve, or I guess, what is it?
Social responsibility.
Visual communication, probably. So,
I think it was really created to match the social responsibility rubric, and someone is trying to use it for the critical thinking. But I think if it were going to be used for critical thinking, we would not need some sort of an argument, and maybe they were getting at that when they said, would you do it again as attempted? Why or why not? It's not a terribly argumentative assignment, which makes the critical thinking rubric very difficult to apply to this.
Could you add a question about the issue at hand that motivates this, and what research is there that says this needs to be addressed, or
Sure,
would that,
that would help.
yeah.
That would help. And it probably makes perfect sense within the context of this course. Whatever, I don't know what the course is, but this is a pretty good example of saying, oh, I have an assignment that's about critical thinking, and they link it to the critical thinking rubric, but they haven't read it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's a pretty good example of that. And if I knew who it was, I could talk to them, but whatever. Okay, last one. Should pharmaceutical companies be allowed to increase the cost of medications? Write a 1,000-word research and position paper discussing the impact of price increase on patients and the healthcare system. Follow the guidelines. Introduction, give 2 reasons why drug companies should be allowed to set drug prices. Give 2 reasons why drug prices should be regulated. Clearly state your opinion on whether drug companies should be allowed to set drug prices or that drug prices should be regulated. Conclusion, bibliography. That's pretty good. It doesn't specifically lead them to talk about assumptions and bias and things, but at least has them talking on both sides, which is a lot more than many assignments do.
I think one weakness in it is that they just put the word introduction, and my students wouldn't know what an appropriate introduction would be without some more guidance.
Maybe not a ton of explanation about the issues involved and background and why this matters and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not anything that really, and I guess that's kind of what Lynn said too, is if they could give us an explanation of the issue, which is the first line on the critical thinking rubric, we should get that in our introduction, and we're not.
Same thing with conclusion. They could say, you know, what are your conclusions and your related outcomes of each opinion?
Yes, they could get to the related outcomes part at the end. Yeah.
And adding to the context, you can provide a link as with the one above it or on the other page that perhaps like a recent student, Martin, what was his name, Scarelli? Who did
Oh, yeah.
or use an article or articles on both sides, just give some, at least something to read to reference to be more in depth. So give them at least a little direction to start there.
I think they have direction, the students do. Remember that I was cutting and pasting these from the short text boxes. However, the reader doesn't have that, Luke. The reader needs that according to line 1 of the critical thinking rubric, right? So, okay, is this making sense to you? As I did put another one in here, and I don't want to walk through it line by line because I want you to go have your break before your next thing. But I did cut and paste some samples of social and or personal responsibility assignments, because those are the hardest ones, aren't they? Those of us who have created those are difficult. I don't know which, I know most of these disciplines actually, but you know, all but one of these on here are also used for critical thinking and writing. So I thought it would be good just for you to have samples of what other disciplines are doing, so that when it comes to writing yours, you can look and say, oh, that was a good idea. I need that question in mind. I'll tell you where I learned something was on the back of the first page. And this is so simple. This is the longest, most complicated assignment, and I do wish somehow they could simplify it. But look at the end of each paragraph. They have labeled where it's supposed to connect to on the social or personal responsibility rubric, which not only holds them accountable, but if these instructions are available to the scorer knows where to look for things.
Right.
We got in a terrible pickle the other day in one of my little groups where we train to do the scoring, because we could not figure out what a student was saying, but once we looked at the instructions and saw that this was supposed to be social responsibility line 1, we were like, that's what the student is trying to say. And it was very helpful. So then this is several pages long, as you can see. Yeah, there's a really good one on the back that hits social responsibility really well. So I just wanted you to have that as examples for when you are either writing your personal and social, or maybe your discipline has given you one and you're just looking for ways of making it better, making it clearer, interacting with your discipline people. So my intention for today, which is coming to a close, is both to figure out how this works. For example, don't give more than one attempt, don't give it to a group, that kind of stuff. But it was also hopefully to engender a little bit of ownership in the process. I think the more connected we feel to things and the more that we understand them, the more we feel like, okay, that's not so hard, and maybe I can see where that might be useful, and you don't feel like an outsider anymore. So that was my hope, and I certainly hoped that much more of the folks would be here, but we have so many good things going on campus right now. So anyway, I hope that it accomplished those things at least. And let's make a plan. Luke and I will send email with information in it that we have promised you here, okay? Including that video link. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.